I want to suggest that you consciously make a decision to change one habit in your life. I'd like to introduce you to someone that I love dearly, my Aunt, Marg Moyer. She was in the habit of letting other people think for her.
What everybody else wanted to do, I would do. You know, you wouldn't start an argument or hurt anybody's feelings. And you waited on people continually.
Marg changed one habit, and she literally changed her life. I'll tell you one thing, she's a force to be reckoned with today. A nicer person, too.
Well, if you were to tell me something and I didn't agree with you, I could tell you, no, I don't agree with that. No, I don't wait on anybody. I think anybody that comes to this home will know that, because once you're here once, after that you get your own coffee. You know, we started our own business, and we really worked. And we worked extremely hard, and the whole family worked, and now everybody reaps the benefits. I would never have had the inner security to start a business.
Now you decide, what habit are you going to change? What have you been doing automatically, without any conscious thought? Pick one and make up your mind. Like Marg, you're going to change. Marg not only brought a lot more of herself to the surface to enjoy, her whole family enjoy her more. You pick one habit and make a similar change in your life. Now John Canary is going to introduce you to your greatest power.
Now I'm going to ask you to take a look at a picture. I'm going to bring a picture up close to you. First of all, I'm going to hold it up. Some of you have seen this before, but I'm going to ask you, some of you, to tell me, what is it you really see? Now, if I were to go over here to Paul and say, Paul, what is it you actually see when I ask you to take a look at this picture? What do you see, Paul?
A skull.
You see a skull. Andy, tell me, what were you able to see?
A skull.
You were able to see a skull. Now, if I take a closer walk over here to someone here, what is your name, sir?
Jim.
Jim, what did you see?
I saw a skull.
You saw a skull. Jim, can you just walk up here for a moment? I just want to get you on camera here and get you to take a closer look at this. And just take a look and tell me, yes or no, is that a skull?
No, it's not a skull.
It's not a skull. As a matter of fact, Jim, is it a beautiful picture if you take a closer look?
It's kind of a nice picture.
Yeah, it's kind of a nice picture. Thanks a lot, Jim. I appreciate that. Now, you see, the closer that I get to you with this picture, you're going to start to see something completely different than what you thought you were looking at. You see, you instantly said, that's a skull. You remember this morning Robert talked about cells of recognition. And you were able to see this with your eyes. Your eyes picked it up and sent a transmission of energy to cells in your brain. Cells in your brain. Those cells were triggered or moved into a speed of vibration, a high amplitude of vibration, and flashed a picture on the screen of your mind. The picture you were able to describe is a skull. But you know something? That's not true. You know what I've got here, isn't that correct?
Correct.
Do you know what I've got here, Tammy? You see, some of us in here have exactly the same picture of what's in this skull. What it is a beautiful lady looking in a mirror. Now, there is no way, unless you get a close look at this, can you see a beautiful lady looking in a mirror. There is just no way that you can actually see it unless you get close. I want you to think about something, and it's extremely important. Do you know that some of us, since we were infants, have been doing certain things in a certain way because of a belief system we've fallen in love with, and we protect that belief system even in favor of the truth. Even in favor of the truth. There are people who will die for tradition even if it means learning the truth. On the very first page of this particular lesson, page 11, at the very top, it's referred to as your greatest power. Your greatest power. And I want you to follow through this particular lesson with me as I begin to work with it on the board a little bit. But at the very top, when you were an infant, and in the early years of your life, the ability to control what energy or ideas were entering your subconscious mind had not yet been developed. In other words, the age of reason, before the age of reason. Before we ate of what is called that tree of knowledge. I'm talking about, you could say, our little life. Long before we were able to say yay or nay. Now there's a question I want you to ask yourself as I get into this. And the question goes like this. Who and or what is in control of my life? Who and or what is in control of my life? Now, George Bernard Shaw one time put it this way. He said, it seems that people are forever blaming their circumstance for who and what they are. I, he said, don't believe in circumstance. The people who get on in this world, who come up with the results, are the people who look for the circumstance they want, and if they can't find them, then they go back and they make them. Then they go back and they make them. So let's just maybe take a look at how we learn some of the things we've learned. First of all, let's understand that we are all a confluence of a genetic structure. You could say that our genetic structure makes up a lot of what we believe and a lot of what we are, but not near as important as our environment. I one time heard Earl Nightingale make a statement that went like this. He said, all kinds of studies have been made regarding motivation. What is it, he said, that motivates us to do the things we do, to achieve the things we achieve? And he said, while there's no pat answer to so large and complicated a question, he said, we believe that the overriding force that motivates people is due to choice of environment. Now, he said, some people make this choice consciously, but a great majority of people make this choice unconsciously as a result of environmental conditioning. Now, let's just go back into our little life for a moment. A very simple little exercise, but yet you see, even though we know it, it doesn't mean we are actually implementing the understanding of it. And you could say there is our outside world that has the predominant influence in the life of a child and what that child becomes. Now think about it. Here is a child who was born in absolute perfection. Maybe not physically speaking, but from a spiritual point of view, this child was born absolutely perfect. And in the beginning, they have the ability to think, they have the ability to reason, they have all the intellectual factors somewhere resonant within their mind, but they're not yet developed. Consequently, their mind is wide open for any idea that is going to come down the tube. Let me give you a good example of that. If I were to just come over here and I were to speak to you, Nick, Mr. Kavuk. Mr. Kavuk, if I were to ask you what religion you are, if you had to name one, what would it be? Christian. Now let's keep in mind that there are what? There are 47 types of Christianity in California alone. Now, what are your children, Nick? They're Christian. Now, were they born Christians, Nick? They were born Christians. Now, here's the point. Here's a brand new baby, and we'll just call this baby Billy or Julie. And one of the things that the baby is going to learn is about that symbol. Is that right? Yes, no. The baby is going to learn something about that symbol, just as Onek was just telling me. That's an idea that the baby is going to learn. But let's understand how the baby learns to begin with. How many people have a young baby? How many? All right. What's the baby's name? Rebecca. What is it? Rebecca. How old is the baby?
11 months.
11 months. Now, Rebecca's being spoon-fed by now. Is that correct, Ed? Yes. Yeah, Rebecca's being spoon-fed. Now, here's what happened. Now, when you first got Rebecca, did you say, your name is Rebecca and don't you ever forget it? Is that what happened the first day you brought her home? Okay? Now, isn't it true that if you notice Rebecca, that at a certain point in her life there, I don't know how many weeks it was, but there's a hand. She's looking at this hand she's holding up. And she's wondering, what is this? They start to examine this hand. They're wondering, what is that? It takes them a while to find out that it belongs to them because they take it and they bite it, and then they know it belongs to them. And they take the same thing with their foot, and they're wondering, where did this come from? Well, Bob mentioned this morning, I am not a physical instrument. I am and I have, and I live in. All right. Well, you see, Rebecca is a spiritual creature. And Rebecca, for the most part, is going to learn about Rebecca from the people by whom she is surrounded in her outside world. That's how Rebecca is going to learn. But do you know there's a certain point in Rebecca's life, and it could be now, could be later, but there's a day that Rebecca is going to go through some introspection, and this is what Rebecca is going to say silently in her heart of hearts. There's a little thing written by Adele Davis, and it goes like this. Who is this person called I? How many times maybe have you been blue? How many times have you been blue and maybe looked at a friend and said, hey gosh, I wish I were you? Or how many times have you attempted to change, say, your whole life's pattern and to rearrange? Rebecca doesn't know. She doesn't know why she feels the way she feels. Well, you see, this is the way that Rebecca started to learn. If we were to just take and say Rebecca is going to learn to eat off the spoon, this is what will happen. Mom will take a spoon. Rebecca's mind is wide open. She's crying for the food. And Mom will take the spoon. She'll start to go like this. Come on, honey. Open your mouth now. Open it wide. Open up, Rebecca. But Rebecca doesn't open up. That's why she has food all over her. She's got it all over the clothes. But Mom continues to go, open wide, honey. And eventually little Rebecca starts to do what? She starts to emulate who? Mom. And she starts to open her mouth, in goes the spoon. She identifies now. There's been an idea or there's been an image fixed in little Rebecca's mind. Do you know this is going to continue as Rebecca begins to grow up? I'm going to say things to her like, you're just like your father. You make me so angry. And all these ideas now are being impregnated or are being impressed in this little girl's mind to the point where they make up the concept, the belief system, or the idea, or what Rebecca comes to believe is true about her world that she lives in. What happens when Rebecca starts to eat of this tree of knowledge where she develops the ability to reason, the ability to choose? Do you know, now that Rebecca can think, let's not make the mistake of believing that because she can think, that she is actually thinking. As Dr. Ken McFarland said, Bob was referring to, 2% of the people think, 3% of the people think they think, 95% of the people rather die than think. Rebecca is not necessarily thinking. Let me give you a good example. What is it that's causing Rebecca to do the things that she's doing? We know it's got to be the conditioned mind. Good, bad, or indifferent, it is the ideas that have been impregnated in her subconscious or her conditioned mind. Let me give you a good example. One day Rebecca is going out and she's doing a little bit of shopping with Mom. And they get in this car and they start down the street. And Rebecca leans into the front seat. Now remember, she now has the ability to reason. But it doesn't mean she is. She is a product to a large extent of her environment. And she leans in the front seat and she says, Mommy, where are all those dumb bastards today? Well, Mom's got all the wisdom. Mom is thinking, you see, she grabs the steering wheel, thinks about it, says, oh, honey, you just relax. Because they only come out when your father is driving. Was that little girl doing something wrong? Did she say anything wrong? Not in her mind. But you see, the day that Mom begins to explain it to her will give her cause to think or give her cause to reason. It is then and only then that she can change the information that has been handed over to the conditioned mind. That has been handed over to the conditioned mind. Now go back to your workbook because we've got to cover these couple of pages. Go back to your workbook right now. Go down a little further where James Allen made a great quote. He said, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Was he talking about the physical pump here? No, he was talking about the heart of hearts. He said, as a man thinketh in his heart. Now, he didn't say as a man and not a woman. He didn't say a man and a woman, not a child. He didn't say a person who works at Ford, but not one at General Motors. He didn't say a black person, but not a white person. He said the heart of hearts because the heart of hearts, you see, has no complexion. The heart of hearts doesn't care where you live. The heart of hearts doesn't care who you know. It doesn't care what you have. The heart of hearts states that any idea you turn over to me, like to Rebecca, if Rebecca was taught an idea that was not good for Rebecca, Rebecca will act out that idea, good, bad, or indifferent, because the idea states that as a person thinketh in their heart, so they will be in their action, in their results, in their life. So you see, maybe in the beginning, someone was in control of Rebecca's life. But it reaches a point where no one is in control of Rebecca's life anymore. And this is what I want to see if we can get through here before too long. Now, help me on this page. It says you're no longer an infant. You do have control over what enters your subconscious mind. Whether you're exercising that control or not exercising it is another subject. You know, a mother got up one morning, she yelled up the stairs, she said, son, get ready, we're going, you got to get going to school. He yelled down, I'm not going. You have to. Give me 2 good reasons why I should. Well, she said, the first one is you're 40 and the second one is you're the principal. So we're no longer an infant. Go along here with me again if you will. You can control what enters your subconscious mind, and furthermore, you definitely have the God-given ability to change the old conditioning. You know, I don't think there is anything greater that you can learn about you than that statement. You see, your present conditioning is your personal life, what you have, what you believe you are. It is your family life, and it is your business life. It is your income. It is everything about you. That is a reflection of your own conditioning. I remember one time I put on a particular tape by a guy named Earl Nightingale. And Nightingale said this. It was probably one of the better things I've ever heard. Nightingale said that your world and everything in it is a reflection of your own mental attitude toward yourself. This world that you live in, that you see, and everything you believe it to be, it is a reflection of your own mental attitude towards yourself. So here we have what is called the old conditioning. That's what we are today, regardless of where that might be. And here we are with a new idea. In other words, we are living with a belief system, as you see over there, and what we are attempting to do sometimes is to develop a new, constructive, or a bigger idea. Had someone mentioned to me today, well, I don't know how to do it. You know what? There isn't a soul alive that knows how to reach a goal until they reach it. There isn't one living soul alive that knows how to reach a goal until they reach it. And even a person who has can't tell a person who hasn't until they reach it. Only then will they know. But you know, there's some good news. Albert Einstein had something burned into the corner of his desk that he said was responsible for every great invention he ever brought about. And this is what he had burned into his desk. That all creation waits. Now think now. All creation, he said, all creation waits with eager longing for the revealing through the sons of man. That's you, and it's me, and it's those around you. In other words, the way to do anything you want to do, it's already here, but you've got to use something to work with it. You've got to use your ability to reason, your ability to choose, your ability to think. You've got to use it. And we're going to cover those two areas because you see, you can reason two ways, and that's what we're going to touch on here. Now, go through with me then the last paragraph in this page. You can control what enters your subconscious mind, and furthermore, you definitely have the God-given ability to change the old conditioning. And by doing this, you can transform your life. Now that's what a behavioral scientist would say. Let's go over to the other side, to the philosopher, the theologian. What would they say? Let's go back to a guy by the name of Paul. He was a pretty bright guy. He used to walk along the shores of Galilee there, and he was picking up and learning as well. And he said something like this. He said that if you want to be transformed, he said, be not of this world. Now, he didn't mean to leave it. What he was pointing out is what you must do is be not of this world of conditions and circumstance. Be not of what already is. But he said, be transformed by the renewing of your mind, the renewing of your conditioning, the renewing of an idea. In other words, replace one idea with a new idea. All right. Would you turn the page, please? Just turn the page over to page 12. What is the purpose of the intellectual factors you see at the top of this page? It says your conscious mind has been endowed with intellectual factors. We know that. This little girl has been endowed with intellectual factors. But in the beginning, they were not able to guard or to protect her against all the information she was getting. You know that Rebecca, you wouldn't do a thing on earth to harm Rebecca. Isn't that true, Dad? There isn't anything you'd ever do to harm Rebecca. But you know, Dad doesn't know everything there is to know about living. And Rebecca's going to be exposed to so many things. Let me give you an example of how Rebecca starts to use what are called her intellectual factors just quickly. Now you can bounce over here, and this is Rebecca now at the age of reason. And Rebecca goes to school. And as she's in there with all the other kids in school, the teacher takes and she puts something on the board for all the kids. And this is what it is. C-A-T. Rebecca does not know what that means. She may have a cat at home, but she doesn't know what it is in a word form. The teacher knows they have sensory factors. Rebecca can see that. She can see cat sends a transmission of energy to cells in her brain. They increase in amplitude of vibration, but there is no picture other than a blank one. So the teacher has to build some cells of recognition. She's going to start to use now her intellectual factors, and this is how she'll do it. She'll say, now class, that's C-A-T. I want you all to repeat after me. She'll say, that's ca-at. Now I want everybody to say that in the room here. Come on. Ca-at. Okay? Now I want you to say ca-at, and I want you to say it a little bit faster. Come on. Cat. And a picture jumps into little Rebecca's mind, a beautiful little Fluffy at home. Now she has a word and she has a picture to identify with it. But you know, on her way home, she's all excited to go home and tell Dad everything that she's learned. She goes dashing through this construction site. And as she goes dashing through, takes shortcut, this guy yells out, "Hey, Charlie, bring that big cat over here." On go the brakes. What is she looking for? She's looking for little Fluffy, but what does she see? A big, giant earth-moving machine. Now she has two pictures for one word. Two pictures, one word. She gets home, she says, "Mommy, Daddy, teacher told me all about Fluffy, C-A-T, and I'm going home here," and the man yelled. And I see this, "Oh no, honey, that was a caterpillar." Now she's got three pictures for one word. But you see, they explain it to her, and something goes away, and it's called confusion. Now I want you to think about this. At some point in your life, in your little life, you were taught things about money, about love. You were taught things about God. You were taught things about work. You were given things about people. Things about people. You were given things and taught things about you. Never measure up. Never amount to anything. You're just like your mother or your father. You're just like your uncle. You can't trust anybody. All red-headed people have bad tempers. Now, if you ever met Bob, you know that's not true. So you see, we have all been taught these things as we started to grow in our life. And now we get to a point in our life where we start thinking about, what is it I want to do? I was talking to Paul a little earlier now. He goes to university here. Why is Paul going to university? Has Paul really decided on something Paul wants to accomplish? Because you see, now we're at a point where we start to think about what we want to do, but sometimes our conditioning gets in the way. Now this is very important. I mentioned we can reason two ways. What are they? We can reason inductively, and we can reason deductively, and I want you all to say it with me. We can reason and we can reason deductively. You know, one of the reasons that we do not continue to think and try to look for new and better ways to do what we want to do, to be what we want to be, and to get to where we want to go? Because we don't do it long enough. I said something this morning that if you put a little bit in, you get a... But if you put a whole lot in, you get a... Now this is important on what I'm going to do here. Very important. When we start to use the idea that I'm just going to share with you here and just get through this workbook, I want you to think about this. There is a season to sow. There is a season to reap. But we don't do both in the same season. Now, at the count of three, I'm going to ask you all to do it with me, that there's a season to sow, there's a season to reap, but you don't do both in the same season. Are you ready? Now I want you all to do it with me. Come on. 1, 2, 3. There's a season to sow. There's a season to reap. But you don't do both in the same season. We can reason, I said, two ways. We can reason inductively and we can reason deductively. Do you know the moment that you begin to entertain a new idea, if your conditioning is evaluating that idea, you may reject that idea only because of your old conditioning. But chances are even good that a person who has experienced a lot of good results in their life when they're presented with a constructive idea, their conditioning will evaluate that idea as a good, constructive idea to move on to another dimension in their life. Think about it this way. Inductively, we have the ability to gather what is called facts. I'm going to give you a good example. There was a man one time who took a $5 bar of iron. And with that $5 bar of iron, he started to really think, what can I do with it? Well, what have they done with it so far? Well, they use it as a paperweight. They use it to keep a door open. But he started to really think. He was using his inductive factor, his critical factor, his logical factor, his creative nature. He was using that to figure out, what can I do with this $5 bar of iron? In other words, he was thinking. And he started to put some facts together as to what he could do with this $5 bar of iron. That's what he found. He found a way to make kitchen cutlery by using and gathering facts and gathering information and bringing from the spiritual plane by bringing thought. The greatest power in all creation, power of thought. And he started to pull in these thoughts to figure out, what can I do with this $5 bar of iron? He found a way to make kitchen cutlery. And he sold it for $250. But someone else came along and they gathered one more piece of information. They started to gather a little more information. I can do something more with that $5 bar of iron. And they arrived at a premise. What's a premise? It's an idea. Science approach every subject with an idea or the premise that there is an answer. He approached the new idea with the $5 bar of iron, that there was a better thing to do with it than kitchen cutlery, and he found it. And he made balance springs and put them in your watch. And he sold it for $250,000. I want you to think about you as a $5 bar of iron. Really stop and think about you as a $5 bar of iron. Because you see, if you're not thinking, you are going to leave your mind open to a world of conditions and to a world of circumstance. You will be totally deductive to why something won't work, to people who say it won't work, to all the adversities that are going to go wrong, to the economy and to everybody in it. You'll become totally deductive to the fact that it won't work. That's going to happen to us from time to time. But if you're not thinking, then your mind is idle. And Napoleon Hill will say right in that book, Think and Grow Rich, this is what he said. He said, the idle mind is the devil's workshop. You've got to specifically stop and think about almost every idea that's presented to you. Is it something that will enhance my life? Rather than becoming totally deductive to it. Let's see how well you remember that. Would you just take your hand like that once more? Let's see if you remember. And just take it and place it on your cheek like that. Now, where's your cheek? Oh, some of you were going right along with me there, weren't you? All right. So on this page, we're talking about, we have the intellectual factors of reason, intuition, perception, will, memory, and imagination. We will never, ever use them if we don't invoke our inductive factor or the ability to think. Tremendous power, tremendous potential, tremendous things wait for everybody who will actually use their intellectual factors to work with this phenomenal potential. So on page 13, your deductive reasoning factor does not have the ability to reject ideas. Think about it. Your inductive reasoning factor does not have the ability to reject an idea. How often have we become totally subjective to an idea or to a group of people without giving it any thought or consideration? It only has the ability to accept and turn over to the treasury of the subconscious mind whatever is offered to it. When your inductive reasoning factor is inoperable, set aside, or not engaged, you are not thinking for yourself. Now, you must follow this book with me. It is vitally, vitally important. If you were in a very positive environment when your conscious mind was in a deductive state, you would automatically become the benefactor of that positive energy that you're surrounded by. It says, however, if your conscious mind was in a deductive state and you were in a negative environment, you would automatically become the benefactor of all the negative energy your senses come into contact with. It says your negative energy comes from many sources: people, papers, television, radio, even loved ones. It passes directly through your conscious mind and causes you to feel or vibrate in a like manner. Think about that. Napoleon Hill often talks about, he said, I want you to imagine, he said, that there's an energy constantly flowing to, with, and through you. And he said that this energy is flowing not only with, to, and through you, but also around you. And he said that energy is affecting people around you, just as their energy is affecting you and the people around them. And the people around them. A person who is continually in a negative environment and whose consciousness is deductive will very quickly become a product of that environment. What is meant by if their consciousness is deductive? In other words, if your belief system lends itself to persisting no more than a day, and you are around people whose consciousness will not persist any more than a day, the chances of you ever changing that persistence and staying in that environment are not very good. Are not very good. Let's go to the next page. The inductive reasoning factor. At the top, your inductive reasoning factor is your thinker. It is referred to in some circles as the critical or analytical factor. This is the part of your personality that actually separates you from all the rest of the animal kingdom, and it gives you dominion over your world. Remember something over there in Genesis 1:26? What did it say? You were given dominion over what? The fowl of the air, the fish of the sea, and everything that creepeth on the earth. Do you think they referred to everything other than your results? Did they mean, Dan, everything but your income? Did they mean everything but your happiness? Did they mean everything but your health? We don't have time to go into the story, but I could tell you a story about health just as far as my own family is concerned, about Maureen, who was very, very ill at one time. But she refused to give in to a life-threatening illness. She wouldn't become deductive to the fact that she could not become healthy again. She thought of all the reasons why she could, and all the reasons how she was going to. And she would not listen or permit anyone who suggested anything remotely different. Anything remotely different than what she wanted to be, what she wanted to do, where she wanted to go. She wouldn't accept it. She wouldn't accept it. This is the part of your personality that actually separates you from the rest of the animal kingdom and gives you dominion over. Properly developed and applied, your inductive reasoning factor will turn you on and turn you into an excellent channel for creative energy to flow through. At the present time, presently, you are vibrating in a notion of magnificent thought and energy. We'll be getting into that a lot more tomorrow. But I want you to imagine yourself for a moment, if you could. Just stop and think. Like, just close your eyes for a moment. Go ahead and do that. Just close your eyes. Everyone close their eyes. And just imagine yourself living in this ocean of motion. Just imagine it. Picture it. You see this tremendous, tremendous mind stuff. An intelligence, if you will. Just imagine it. You're plugging into it. Right now you're doing that. You're plugging into it. And you are drawing from it right now. As you stop and think, as you can see it, you are actually drawing from it. Pulling from it. Do you know that of all the good of this universe, we're poured over each person in this room, the only amount of that good that you can have is yours only by right of your consciousness. The only amount you can have is the amount you're able to understand. You can only have what is yours by right of consciousness. Let's continue in the book. When these thoughts are brought together, they build creative ideas that can change your old conditioning and literally build your world more beautiful than you previously could have imagined. Let me tell you something that I just have absolutely no problem with anymore with regard to taking a number of thoughts. Bob mentioned this morning something about water. Water is energy at a certain state of vibration. Yes, no? Yes. In other words, it is two hydrogen atoms and one at a certain state of vibration. Think about this. Success is energy, a certain group of thoughts that form an idea at a certain state of vibration. Success is nothing more but energy in its most organized state of vibration. Failure, therefore, would be energy, a certain group of thoughts vibrating against natural law, known as confusion. It is energy in its most confused state of vibration. Is that difficult? I don't think so. What is health? It is an orderly state of vibration. But to achieve it, we must invoke and use our inductive factor, what we're talking about here. So when these thoughts are brought together, they build creative ideas that can change your old conditioning and literally build your world more beautiful than you previously could have imagined. You must, however, properly plant these creative ideas in the treasury of your subconscious mind, the part of your mind that transforms every impression that enters in it into physical form. The Word was turned into flesh. Think about that. What is the Word? It is the formulation of your thoughts into an idea. That's when it becomes the Word transformed into a reality or in the form of a result. I'm asking you to examine that idea. Just examine it. In big black print in your book, I want you to really look at it. Will this idea improve the quality of my life? How many people here, for some time now, have had a great desire on something they want to be, something they want to do, and something they want to have? How many people have actually desired something that you have not yet accomplished? Now, honestly, would you put your hands up? Hold them way up high there. Hold them way up high. Just keep them up there for a minute. Now let them down, and let me ask you this. With respect to this idea, isn't it true you have had ways on how you can achieve it? Yes, no? Isn't it true that ideas have come to your mind on things that you should do, but you've rejected them because of why? Say it louder. Fear. Or is it old conditioning? Yes. Does the old conditioning tell you why you can't do it? Yes. Does it act as a reminder as to what went wrong the last time? Yes. Isn't it true that the last time someone told you, hey, you shouldn't do this, you failed, so you should listen to the next person again? So we've got to start using, not our old conditioning, not being deductive, we've got to start to use what? Inductive reasoning. What is inductive reasoning? Tell me. Is it just thinking or thinking about? Yeah, remember, now we're not talking about just mental gymnastics here. We're talking about working with the power of thought. Thinking is working with the power of thought. I don't know how many people are familiar with a place called Glace Bay, Nova Scotia. Well, that's where I come from, Glace Bay, Nova Scotia. It's not the end of the earth, but you can see it from there. And it's a little coal mining town. No, this is really a different place there. It's a little coal mining town just down Nova Scotia there. Quite a place. And I can remember my dad coming home there every day, and he had this big light on the top of a big hat to protect his head because he worked out under the sea in the coal mines. And he'd have all these old clothes on, and they'd be all dirty and black, and he just looked awful. And he'd come home and home and home and home and home and home. And a lot of people here know my dad pretty well. He used to say, it's all you got to do is work hard, and it's all you got to do is be honest, and you're going to win. Now, that's only partly true. Hill said in his book, and I have to hurry this up now, Hill pointed out in his book, until, he said, we perish such foolish thoughts that working hard and being honest will bring us the desired riches. He said we'll never change the result. until we learn that we must invoke, implement, become aware of. He said this power of thought, and it's only reached, he said, through the inductive factor or through the ability to think. That's what thinking is. It is working with the power of thought to improve the conditions that you presently have and not allowing yourself to become deductive to all the reasons why it can't. So let me kind of bring this in for a landing then at the bottom here. If when an idea enters your mind, and it's happening all the time at a fraction of a second, the answer to the above question is yes, then the idea is very likely good for you. Will the ideas that you have held, that enter your mind from time to time on how you can achieve a desire, the next time that idea enters your mind and you say, will this idea improve my life, you've got to act on the idea. There's a gentleman I talked to at lunch down here. I hope you're listening. Hope you're listening. Over on page 15, quick exercise.
John Canary made reference to page 15 and 16 in your action planner. They're vitally important pages. It's absolutely essential that you answer these questions, go over them, and really think. What we're doing is looking at where we are in our life right now financially. Let me touch on a couple of the questions. In your present position, how much money do you earn? How much have you earned up to this point in your life? If you converted everything you owned into cash and paid any outstanding debts, how much money would you have? Now, there's a couple of questions here that frequently raise questions in our seminar. Do you think any person is worth $1 million a year or more? And there's another one by George Bernard Shaw, and we're using this within the context of earning money, where he said it is a sin to be poor. Do you agree with Shaw's statements? Now, consider this for a moment. If money is reward we receive for service rendered, and we render a lot of service, it would necessarily follow that we would be worth a lot of money. And if we keep in mind that money is a servant and you're the master, and that you can extend the service that you render far beyond your own physical presence if you have enough money, I think we will realize what George Bernard Shaw said was accurate. It is a sin to be poor. If we haven't got much money, we're just not rendering much service. And I think the greatest is the servant. Answer those questions accurately. And realize this, if it doesn't look too good, that's not bad. At least you know where you're at. And as we get into the next part of this program, we can show you then how to get to where you want to go. Remember, I pointed out it's absolutely essential that you have a goal if you're going to get the best out of this program.